Good afternoon. How's your event been so far? Productive? Okay. Are you tired yet? You've got several hours more to go before there's any drinks, so... I'm here with a few of my colleagues from a company called Acquia and one of our implementation partners, and we are, I feel, in a very privileged position to be able to help organizations around the world, including a large number of governmental and educational institutions, do better business, whatever your definition of business is, serving citizens, students, or even making money, primarily with an open source software package called Drupal. And our company comes from a very deep Drupal background. The project lead of Drupal itself is a co-founder and CTO of our company. So a lot of us in the open source world have a very idealistic background, and Drupal is the content management system. I should say, the only content management system of significant complexity and flexibility that is designed from the ground up to be clicked together in the user interface. So if you look at Symfony CMF, if you look at Typo3, if you look at the open source competitors, if you look at a lot of the proprietary competitors, you have to have an awful lot of technical knowledge to make anything of significant complexity or power. And we have made a conscious decision for more than a decade to do just the opposite of that. So here's one of the very prominent people in the Drupal project talking about that decision and why we think that way, and she happens to be a colleague of mine at Acquia as well.
Drupal and what I get excited about in that sort of work is, essentially what we do as Drupal developers is we make really abstract, complicated, programming concepts accessible to non-developers. When we write things like the views module, you can do very sophisticated queries and charts and maps and all kinds of things just by clicking a few buttons without having to understand all the code that comes underneath it. So what I get really excited about is the idea that Drupal, and particularly Drupal 8, could be this vehicle through which we create really easily accessible, things that can be piped through a mobile application or usable on the internet, and used as a tool to help those people who are on the front lines trying to make the world a better place, and we can build technology to enable that.
I'll be back with more. So that's a colleague of ours. We were talking at the United Nations this spring. So open source and Drupal itself do all these amazing things. And there's so this is the new version where I never know where my notes are. Interesting. Yeah, okay, so if I can't see oh, there we go. Upgrade your system, lose everything, right? So, in the United States, there's been this beautiful, interesting document called the Constitution. It's been around for a couple of 100 years, and it gives a lot of very powerful theoretical rights, including the right to petition your government for change. But how do you implement that in 1850 in a country that's stretching thousands and thousands and thousands of miles across the whole continent? It's very, very difficult. Well, turns out with open source software, you can build with Drupal, you can build the We the People application that allows citizens to petition for meaningful change in their country. Who's familiar with the National Death Star project in the United States? Right. So this is a real application. At the time, and it's written in Drupal, and at the time I believe you had to have 25 or 30,000 electronic signatures on any petition to the government to force the government to respond. The White House responded to this petition saying, this is not the petition that you're looking for, and proposed that the budget was just too exorbitant to build the National Death Star right now. But all joking aside, this affected real change in the world because petitions now have to have 100,000 signatures before the White House addresses them. This is a very powerful bit of software, though. It's government infrastructure, it's built on open source, and nowadays the White House itself not only runs its website on Drupal, but it has at least 17 GitHub repositories where it's building government infrastructure and sharing it with any other organization in the world, be that a government or what have you. So it's very powerful. Open source is creating a lot of very powerful changes in the world now. Today, I'm going to be talking very fast. I have far too many slides and I'm way too excited about telling you way too many things. So forgive me. The slides are going to be online. You can find me very easily online. You can contact all of my colleagues. So we're very happy to. We'll also be putting a video of this on YouTube. So any questions you have, we'll also be happy to answer at the end. I want to tell you what I think successful digital government means today. A few aspects of that. Exactly what is open source software, just so that we're clear we're talking about the same thing. What is Drupal, and how Drupal is delivering successful digital government today. So real examples of some of these concepts that I want to talk about, and how does our company Acquia fit into this picture. My normal role is, as open source evangelist, is not to talk so much about specific parts of our company, so I've brought two gentlemen from our business development unit to help me explain that better to you. To put all of this in context, assume that I'm going to convince you to some degree of all of this stuff. Acquia does this, in this case, enable governments to make digital transitions successfully with a lot of people around the world. Just for the context in terms of success, yesterday it was announced that we are the service provider to the Australian government. The Australian government CTO said, we designed GovCMS to save costs while empowering agencies to act independently. We're supporting innovation by relying on Drupal, a technology proven in governments around the world. Open source technologies like Drupal, when paired with an open cloud platform like Acquia Cloud, are creating efficiencies in government and disrupting the way we deliver digital citizen experiences for the better. So John Sheridan is also a very prominent blogger and very easy to find online. He and I keynoted government Drupal IT event in Canberra a couple of weeks ago. He's actually also very, very nice in person, although, like many government officials, he has absolutely no time. So, who works in government here in the room? Local governments of some kind, national governments of some kind, educational institutions, you. And who's a service provider who'd like to be working with governments? right, okay. So, most people call me Jam. I really own this suit, and this photo that won the internet was a real happenstance. There was a photo booth at a conference I was speaking at. I am the open source evangelist at Acquia. I am very active on our podcast stream. The slides for this presentation are going to be on slideshare.net/HornCologne. You can find me on Twitter making a lot of noise. You can contact me, jam@acquia.com. So, let's talk about a definition of success so that we can then agree on whether I'm making a solid case for Drupal enabling successful digital government. So, our success definition for today, 4 aspects that you want in successful digital government would be collaboration, transparency, participation, and innovation. Now, I give a lot of business talks as well. They're not specifically government focused, but focused, on e-commerce, on whatever form of business it may have. Coaching Drupal service providers to help them talk with potential clients, but also talking with a lot of organizations about how they can take advantage of Drupal itself, open source software. So when I talk with businesses, I talk about innovation, cost savings, efficiency, and risk mitigation as the qualities of successful digital business today. These really do apply as well to digital government. I think, cost savings and efficiency, innovation, of course, we need that as government organizations. However, if we talk, I'm going to be talking about innovation anyway. If we talk about cost savings, the state of Georgia in the United States has a projected $4.7 million savings by migrating 55 websites from their legacy systems to Drupal on Acquia Cloud. And in terms of efficiency, one point that I find very, very interesting is when you download Drupal in the first minute of your project, you download it and you put it on a development environment for somebody to design the first prototype of your project. You've downloaded millions of hours of coding, right? Tens of thousands of bug fixes, years of best practices that are developed in the software industry that are on the front lines of the web today. And you get that at a price of $0. That is fairly efficient. We give you a nice head start. So, let's talk about Collaboration, transparency, participation, innovation today. What is open source? Just so that we're on the same page. I define open source as being for freedoms. So you are free to use it for anything, anywhere, and forever. It happens to come at a price, a license fee of 0 Drupals, right?
0 Drupals.
Yeah, so you don't pay money to get and download and use the same thing that NBC is using, that Sony is using, that Al Jazeera is using, that the White House is using, that the City of London is using. But it's much more important that you are free to do anything you want with it. You're free to use it. And nobody can take it away and nobody can sunset it. It puts you in control. We can't tell you that next year's Drupal, right? We can't charge you twice as much for it and turn off this year's Drupal. You're in control of your own infrastructure, and it's a very important freedom. There's a lot of risk mitigation in understanding what you're using. You can look at every single line of code in open source software and make better informed decisions. And if you don't know enough about it, in my case, I trust that because NASA uses it, because the United States Department of Energy uses it, and because the New York Stock Exchange uses it, that it's safe enough and secure enough for me. If you don't trust them, and you can't read the code, you can hire experts. It's your choice to test it as well. But it's being used in governments all around the world, and security tested all the time. You're free to make it the tool that you need it to be. So whatever your use case is, if you start with it and it does 50, 60, 80, 90% of what you need, either because in and of itself it does a good job and you basically need straight up content management, or because you've downloaded a distribution, a package of Drupal that's pre-configured to run a government department, run a school, sell books, whatever it is, whatever else you need to fix the look, the feel, the workflow, the approvals, some new functionality that you don't have, you are free to make those changes. And if you're a service provider, you're free to build a business around your expertise in that area. But if you're a government department and you've built the ideal solution for your bit of government, you're also free to pass that to all the other bits of government that can use that. So all of a sudden this becomes a wonderful, virtuous circle, right? These 4 things give you an incredible amount of power in your hands. Anyone interested in politics in this room? You're probably all sick of politics because you work with the politicians all the time. There's a very interesting book called One Way Forward, The Outsider's Guide to Fixing the Republic. Who knows who Lawrence Lessig is? Harvard law professor. He invented Creative Commons, the public domain licensing structure, which originated out of the copyleft movement. He wrote this book about the corruption of money itself in politics, not about people taking bribes, but the fact that too much money in the system corrupts it. Very interestingly, in the introduction, he's talking with people in 2011. So you have the Tea Party and you have the Occupy Wall Street people. These are real extremes in US politics in that moment in history. And both groups are telling that, oh, we are open source political movements, which is really interesting. And he ends up defining open source as the fastest possible rate of improving ideas. And that's a very powerful idea. This slide is an entire other talk that I do that takes about 45 minutes, and I'm going to spend less than a minute on it now. But basically, if you compare traditional or proprietary solutions and open source, it's important that you shape your thinking so we as open source service providers, we should never tell you that stuff is free. We're going to give you free software and it's going to be excellent. Because if you think something's free, then you think it's free, right? IT projects you have to have people doing the development, you have to host it somewhere, bandwidth costs you, design and functionality, you have to pay for that. But as soon as you have no license fee, right? You can invest in your team and retrain them. You can hire new people. You can build a feature when you need it. You're not locked into the UK regional Oracle provider, the Norwegian Microsoft partner, whoever it is. If Acquia messes up, if we do a terrible job, God forbid, if we do a terrible job for you, there are literally thousands of Drupal service providers around the world who do, between them, cover most of the range of services that we offer. And between in-house expertise and other service providers, you can get your thing done. However, an open source service provider is bound and determined to give you the best possible service at all times, because you can't actually walk away. So you're going to get very, very dedicated service providers going the Drupal route. Open source means you never have to ask for your data back. You decide to get what you need when you need it. It also happens that there's a lot of functionality being given to you for free because there's an awful lot of Drupal going on in the world. You get what you need when you need it. You're on the cutting edge of innovation. Drupal itself is an open source project that has all the advantages that I've just been talking about, multiplied by the fact that it is an absolutely enormous community. There are more than 20,000 active Drupal developers. When you hire Hugo to build your website, he has a developer team of 25,000 people working for him, right? And a user testing community of 100 or 150,000 people. Okay, active members on Drupal.org at this point, depending on how you slice it, 80 to 150,000 people. We have 1 million member numbers, but that doesn't count. It's all over the world, probably 2% of the internet, and like I said, an incredible vendor landscape. So, open source, Drupal. We've kind of got a working definition. Let's go back to our definition of success and see if Drupal is delivering this in some meaningful way in the world for real. So I've taken these 4 concepts and I've roughly found, just thought of 2 possible ways that you could think about that concept, and then I'm going to show some real-world examples revolving around Drupal and open source. So, Drupal delivering collaboration. First of all, the fact that I get millions of hours of coding and all this functionality when I download it, that's an incredible partnership already. You're already being helped by an amazing number of people, experts from the worldwide software industry. If you look at alert.mta info, which is built by a company called Blink Reaction, which is a partner of ours in New Jersey, it is essentially the data portal of the New York City public transit system, and it provides a lot of ways to interact with that data. It's also a forward-facing website that shows you what's going on in the New York tube system in any given moment. And when you get situations like Hurricane Sandy, a couple of years ago, all of a sudden large parts of the system were being flooded, stations were being closed, people were stuck in the wrong boroughs in the city and needed to get home, so they needed a way to provide real-time information. Now, luckily they had this Drupal platform implemented. Before they implemented this platform, people, even within their own organization who needed a change made to the website, had to email that change to someone who opened the email and read it and opened up the code and put it into the existing notification system, and then, I don't think it was that they actually hard-coded it and FTP'd it up, but it was a multi-step process, and it was highly failure-prone and highly unreliable. They were running their own servers on the island of Manhattan, so that if flooding or electrical problems, which are fairly common in the United States, because they have the overland electrical system, their servers could just go down. They could lose the whole thing. So they moved it onto Acquia Cloud, and they've got a workflow system where anyone who needs to be able to change data in real time on the site can put the changes in, hit commit, that gets sent to whoever's supposed to approve that, right? Who also sees it in real time on their phone, on their screen, wherever they are, and they can say, yes, go. And so changes can be basically made as fast as people can read and approve, correct spelling errors and what have you. And this, we believe, probably saved lives and certainly helped out a lot of people in that disaster. So that's a really interesting, I think it's really interesting. So collaboration, 1, you collaborate with tens of thousands of people around the world. 2, this allowed people within their own company to collaborate much more efficiently in a mission critical application of the information that they have inside the company. The Said Business School is running completely on Drupal, and it was a project of ours. It's a very interesting modern business school embedded in Oxford University. They've got some really interesting ideas. They've got this platform which is called the Global Opportunities and Threats Oxford, and it's an exclusive community for faculty, alumni, and current students to discuss and collaborate on visionary solutions for the world's problems. Climate change, the impact of big data on society, and so on. But Drupal as a platform for ideation, collaboration in this very classic business sense of discussing and coming up with new ideas. It's very, very powerful, and this is certainly a very interesting example in succeeding. Transparency. So, open source code is very, very Darwinian. And when I say that, I'm quoting there's a quote that I like from a guy called Jeff Eaton, and it says, quality is a common outcome of transparency. The bad dies or the bad gets fixed. On Drupal.org, we have 10 or 20,000 plugin modules for Drupal. I think for the current version, for Drupal 7, there are 8,000 or 9,000 compatible plugins that add functionality to Drupal. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 competing solutions to a problem space, build a picture gallery, Twitter integration, catalog, all that stuff that you could do with a website, right? People have different ideas how to solve that. And if you go and look at the usage statistics on Drupal.org, you'll see very quickly if there are 5 solutions, there'll be one that's installed on 50,000 sites, and there'll be one that's installed on 10,000 sites, and there'll be 3 that are installed on 800, 100, and 200 sites. So it's very, very clear which solution is the preferred solution, and when you go and look at the code, you go and test it out. These are then the most functional, the best solutions, and at that point, the better they are, the more people they're using, the more likely it is for other developers, other users, to go and contribute improvements there, add more functionality, add more efficiency, so you have a sort of a survival of the fittest situation. Because you can see and understand and change the code. It's exactly as Darwinian on Drupal.org because we have a centralized code repository. It's a reputation economy. If you post software that points other users at viruses, at malware, is written insecurely, nobody's going to use it, right? In the best case, they will tell you, well, in every case, the security team will flag it and stop people using it. They will give you a chance to fix it. But if it's your modus operandi, if that's the sort of thing that you like to post, you won't be allowed to post anymore. And the community is very, very careful about monitoring what's going on. So Drupal code itself, because of the size of the community, has this very Darwinian aspect to it. And quality and security are common outcomes of transparency. The US Department of Defense CIO said many years ago at this point that open source software is absolutely good enough for defense purposes. In fact, I think I would, as much as I'm not a fan of war, I would like to know that my military is at least completely in control of its infrastructure so that nothing happens that, you know, by accident. This report is available online. Forrester talked about this in 2012, that the pharmaceutical industry was starting to use open source. At this point, Acquia has several major clients in the pharmaceutical and life sciences industry, which we simply never expected 3 or 4 years ago. Highly security critical industries like pharmaceuticals are turning to Drupal now, turning to open source software for their applications. It's pretty big. And the hotbed of radicals that is the Norwegian National Association of Accountants made a submission recently to the government, request for some kind of request. They were talking about redesigning the cash register, the till standard in Norway to prevent fraud, essentially. So a till must, never not print a receipt, and you can't go back on transactions, and blah, 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 blah. And the accounting, the National Association of Accountants in Norway said the only way to have a true system of record is if it's run with open source software. Really audible, really trustable systems. You have to be able to see every single line of code. Another kind of transparency, there's a thing called itdashboard.gov in the US, which allows you to slice and dice federal spending on IT in a bunch of ways, and you can drill down to individual budgets and their managers. And it's a lovely bit of Drupal software. The software itself has been open sourced so that other people can use it. So this is, another take on transparency. This is Drupal facilitating transparency in the world. Now, I just took this because it's an awesome picture. This is supposed to represent all of the data that government organizations produce, right? And how much is actually probably digitally available online in consumable formats, APIs, etc. Who's heard of CCAN? CCAN is a Python application for making open data portals, and it's very good, it's very functional, it's very interesting. It is, however, standalone and harder to integrate into other systems. DCAN is a Drupal distribution that is feature equivalent to CCAN, but it brings all the advantages of Drupal with it, and it's completely integrated into any other functionality that you want to do with Drupal, whether that be mapping, whether that be tagging and taxonomy, and all of the content management aspects that Drupal brings. With it, DCAN is already in fairly wide use. Here's a nice way that it's tied into a mapping application. It turns out that the city of Cologne, where I live, not only has an open data portal, but it is running on DCAN, as is Bonn next door, down the road. The Russian open data portal. So this is a very powerful, very, very interesting Drupal package for anyone who wants to be doing open data applications. And the people who developed this are working with Acquia so that we can provide this as a service. So if anyone's interested in this, please talk with us about it. It's very, very exciting. It's also, it is also, of course, because it's open source, available to you to have online. I would contend that Drupal delivers participation as well. Here's a really interesting system called peer-to-patent that allows for the first time meaningful contribution and commentary on patent applications. That's a pretty radical step also, I guess, in transparency. The patent system in some countries is fairly broken. And right, so peer-to-patent is a UK system. In terms of participation in the Drupal community, there was a terrible tornado in Oklahoma. I'm thinking when that was. It was last spring, I guess. And about 70 people at one of our big conventions called DrupalCon in Portland, Oregon, about 70 people got together and sat down for 24 hours and created this app and then donated it to the government. And basically, in the end, you can offer help and ask for help. And it worked on a variety, it works on a lot of different devices. And so this has also now been used in other systems situations. But this is open source software allows us at very low investment. I mean, investing my own time, whatever I think that's worth. I can go and make a difference to the real world. I can participate in actual events that are actually happening now and help the government react and help people on the ground. And people who've been in software for a long time, software started as a very, very abstract thing. And even if you're checking your budget for the year or what have you, it's just numbers. It's not. But actually now with software, we can participate in real events in real time in the world and make a difference. And it's an incredibly empowering feeling to be part of this. And you can certainly take advantage of it. I already mentioned We the People as a way to participate in contributing to public discourse in the United States. And DCAN can also be used for things like reporting broken windows and potholes and streetlights. You can set it up to be one of those neighborhood improvement reporting kind of a system. Drupal's also delivering innovation. There's another book that I can highly recommend called Democratizing Innovation. Basically, in the smallest nutshell I can pack this into, Eric von Hippel talks about how the old model was a manufacturer makes something and broadcasts it to you, the consumer, and you take it and you use it. You have, as a consumer, you have very little control over that and what it looks like and how it works. However, over time, things like windsurfing emerged because people took surfboards and small sails and bits of pipe and made windsurfers, right? There wasn't a windsurfing industrial complex that gave us windsurf equipment, right? So when I use open source software and I change it to be exactly the tool that I need with exactly the right workflow, when I make my Drupal distribution, when I make DCAN, or when I make Now Public, or when I make all of these amazing Drupal distributions for myself, I am manufacturing the software that I use. And we empower ourselves this way. So this is the democratization of innovation is very, very interesting. So also in terms of innovation, the MTA Open Data Portal has allowed at this time at least 77 groups of people to make apps based on the information about what's going on the New York subway at any given time. So I imagine, you know, maybe the fact that the New York subway took the information that it already had and made it public in a digitally consumable, standardized form, I think ideally, in my imagination, you know, that might be feeding 100 families, right? What an amazing idea. You as a government department have all this information flying around, information that you needed for something, but we as app developers, we as citizens, could also be using that, and we could be using it to generate economic value, right? Which is a fundamental interest of you as governments. So Drupal is powering innovation in some very interesting ways. And the simple fact that Drupal is on the front lines of the web today, working for clients like you, means that new features, new stuff that comes on the web gets integrated into Drupal very, very quickly. Google introduced a thing called @FontFace a few years ago. It was the first time that we could use beautiful and interesting fonts in websites. Who remembers that? Right. How long did it take between Google releasing @FontFace and the Drupal integration for that to be released? I will take inches or centimeters. 2 months. It took 24 hours. From the time that Pinterest got 10 million unique visitors, the first 10 million people visited Pinterest. It was February 2012. By March 2012, by April 2012, there was a full Drupal integration of Pinterest and 25 websites were running it already. Being part of an open source community at critical mass gives you incredible speed of innovation as well. So, at 33 minutes, whew, I hope that I have showed that Drupal is open source. Drupal is delivering these 4 aspects of what good digital government is in a bunch of ways. I would like to call Hugo Pickford-Wardle to the stage to talk a little bit about being out in the trenches, working with government clients on these issues. So why don't you tell us, and you know, we're very pressed for time. Yeah. You are the Chief Innovation Officer at Matter. Yes. What does Matter do?
So at Matter, we're working with government organisations to create new experiences that put the citizen at the heart of that experience, work out what they need, so that we can make savings that are needed across lots of different government departments by actually creating experiences that are going to end up making those savings. So we do Drupal integration as part of that, and we focus a lot on actually trying to bring in a lot of the elements that Jam has already been talking about the transparency in those services, and about the participation of those citizens in being able to also lead that into cost savings, really.
So, one sentence, what are government bodies trying to accomplish for and with their citizens today?
So, I guess what I'm seeing, and I was talking about this earlier, is that there is a current mismatch between the financial landscape and the budgets being cut and the expectations of citizens going up because they're actually being exposed to other service providers in the digital space where they expect a certain level of service. And I think that what he's trying to do is trying to match those two things. That's, I think, the crux of the problem.
So the role of government is changing today. And you have some really helpful, especially in the UK, you have some really helpful things. If who's familiar with the GDS and the GDS design principles? Yes, we're living with those every day. So talk about the challenges that government is facing today and how the GDS is actually enabling them to address them.
So I think that what GDS has been doing has been absolutely fantastic, because I think what it's done actually starts with the digital strategy, because I think the digital strategy is right. I think that's what it fundamentally boils down to, is that if you create experiences that are so good that people want to use them, then they aren't going to call your call centre, they'll use your cheaper version over here, and that's going to be the way of doing those cost savings. And I think that what GDS are doing are doing that participation with the community, so opening up everything so that there's actually a manual to use to be able to explain how to do it, and fundamentally not reinventing the wheel. I think that's kind of a really big part of why the open source movement, I think, is really important, not just in government actually, but everywhere, because I'd say the same thing in a commercial context, is that if someone's already done all of this work and you can use it, why start from down here if you can start from the point where you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you can focus on what's going to actually add value both to your organisation and to your customers. Because what we were talking about earlier was that a lot of the work that we do ends up being in the content, the actual words on the page. And if we're focused on trying to create technology to do something, that's money that could be used on working out what words should we use that to describe to the user in the best possible way to actually make them do the thing. And then that just seems to be a better place to be spending the money than on trying to, re-engineer a CMS. I mean, a CMS is about presenting content. So if you've already got one that works and you can work on the content piece, it just seems sensible to do that. And if you can then use that in other parts of the business to be able to open up data and other pieces, it just seems like a sensible approach, really.
So in Drupal, we talk a lot about building on the shoulders of giants, never having to write the same thing twice. So that can certainly not only save costs and add efficiencies, but it also lets you focus on your core business, your core activity, what's actually important for your operation and for your constituents. So now, Hugo, in the UK, I understand that the Society of IT Managers has determined that roughly 43% of access to government services is already digital. Accenture just did an interesting survey in the United States of a few thousand people, and the response there was that 70% of respondents would like to use more digital access, more mobile, more tablet, more computer, what have you, to access government services than they are already. And 69% of the same survey said they would welcome electronic alerts from the government, and more than half indicated that they would consume digital services via mobile websites and apps. So how are you serving this need with open source solutions, especially considering that a certain segment of the population nowadays can only access the internet via mobile devices?
So I think because we start looking at the customer experience rather than kind of actually working out the technology, starting with where the customer is, we find that almost in all experiences there is a need to actually start with designing for mobile first. So all of the design work we do is responsive, and we actually are focused on making sure that if it's going to work on someone's mobile, one of the things that happens when you design for mobile is you're really restricted. So kind of when you have a nice big screen to play with, you can put lots of different things on it and tell them to go in 27 different directions at the same time and confuse the hell out of people. But if you have a mobile screen, you can probably only tell them to do one thing at a time and keep it very focused. So it's both useful from a design point of view, but then actually being able to make sure that people can have a ubiquitous experience wherever they're actually interacting with you, I think is really key. And there are only a few places where we haven't done that. So with district surveyors, when we kind of went and did that work, we realised actually everyone who's interacting with this is mobile. It's mobile only. It doesn't really need to be focused on designing for other platforms. Whereas for most of it, it's actually designing for all of those different experiences and making something that's going to work across them all. But also not using apps a lot of the time, because unless you've got a really compelling reason to create an app, there's a massive cost of ownership associated with it. You know, first of all, got your iPhone, then you've got your iPad, then you've got your Android. Suddenly, you're pretty much bankrupt. And unless there is real value in having an app as opposed to a responsive website, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think it's always about trying to, again, go back to the customer, work out why they're interacting with it. You know, why are they interacting with it via a mobile device? Well, often they're multitasking, and they kind of, you know, whether they're sitting at home watching TV whilst interacting with the government, or whether they're trying to do it on their commute into work. Those are the sorts of questions that you kind of start being able to design the right experience for. And when you've got something where people have already done the work to make plenty of responsive things as well, you can actually test those ideas out and actually get some proof that the investment you're making anyway is going to be worthwhile.
So we called this segment avoiding the queue. I think the more common term now is channel shift in the UK. In fact, I'll be speaking at a whole government IT conference that's called channel shift, something, 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 government soon. So talk about channel shift, talk about the open source mandate in UK government IT, and then tell us a little bit about this very beautiful, very practical site. This is an actual screenshot from my phone last night of this particular site. So, so channel shift and the open source mandate and...
So the work that we did at Westminster was, I mean, it was a channel shift project, right? So the whole savings, the whole business case was around channel shift, which actually I think comes in two parts. Because I think when you break it down, there is the shifting those calls from the call centre to the digital channels. So if someone has a query, being able to self-serve on that digital channel. But then there's also the really key part of the avoiding the repeat calls that are caused by not having the right information, not having the right experience, not being able to self-serve online. So again, because we can also put the same system into the call centre and actually start having a system that is the website and the system that the call centre use, and start feeding the content that is being collected from the call centre back to customers, you can actually make real changes in the number of calls that you're receiving. We did an experiment actually, just putting an extra touch point into the planning journey at Westminster. And through the content and the detail of that particular touch point, we were basically saying, yes, we received your planning application, and don't call us for the next 2 weeks because we're going through the process to work out what we're going to do with it. And here's the timescale. Just by doing that, we reduced calls by 33%, because those calls were not only one call, but people called up repeatedly to find out where their application was. And I think that the fact that the government have written a strategy where they're putting open source at the heart of it is because that test that we did was not BAU. It was actually go and prove that this piece will work before going into BAU. And I think there's both really strong case for putting open source at the heart of your actual production system, but also it's that participation part that you can go and actually use it to create experiences that you can test with real customers, to build that case, to put it into the core of your business as well. And so hopefully that answers.
That sounds great.
Yep.
So Hugo is with Matter. They have a stand upstairs.
Stand number 2.
Stand number 2. You can find them online at
Experience Matter.
experiencematter.co.uk. Hey, thanks a lot.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Chris Roye, Regional Director at Acquia. You have 4 minutes to talk about why the University of Surrey University, chose Acquia.
Yeah.
Starting now.
So let me get away the camera. So you guys haven't heard much about Acquia so far. We've spoken in great detail about Drupal. A show of hands who's heard about Acquia. Anything? Wow, okay, that's good. So what I'm going to kind of bring you through now is kind of taking Drupal aside and leaving this kind of technology choice completely to one side and looking at the process of actually running a website and some of the things some of the challenges that kind of enter into the fray and enter into your head when choosing who you decide to partner with and host with and run your support through. So Surrey University is a particular customer that we decided to pretty much standard customer, standard environment, and really just to discuss the challenges that they had and why they chose Acquia. So those technically minded people in the audience will kind of see this is a pretty standard environment. You have your organisation over here, where all the content is created by clever marketing people, website development, you have the organisation, and linked with the organisation you have a hosting company that share between the IT people in the university and the hosting company responsibility for the stack, the technology piece, if you will, and also the support, the Drupal code and application support. So interesting things happen when stuff doesn't really work particularly well, because as you can imagine, you have a whole bunch of people feeding content in from here. You have website developers adding content daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, and you have a whole bunch of technology here, all of which, when they fail, could result in something not happening which is typically the website not being available.
And an incredible web of very tenuous connections between all of the pieces of this machine. So
typically what happens when a website goes down is that the first things that the customer will do is they'll kind of call up their hosting provider. Okay, my website's down. I want to call my hosting provider up and they're going to tell me exactly what's wrong. And they're going to fix it, right? And it's all going to be good. And then I'm going to just kind of refresh my screen, website's going to be up, everything's going to be fine. Truth is, what will happen 9 times out of 10 is they'll say, well, it works. We can ping the outside world. Our website works. You're live. There's nothing we can do here. We might be able to throw more hardware at it. That's not necessarily going to fix the problem. But as far as we're concerned, we're okay. So the next thing you might do is you might go to your IT help desk. And your IT help desk will do everything they can do that's on their side of the firewall, which is effectively test DNSs and make sure that they can ping the outside world, and they probably phone the hosting company and they confirm that they can see the outside world, and everybody can see the outside world, but no one can see your website. So what happens next is you go and find your kind of the web developers who are drunk on energy drinks downstairs developing stuff, and they say, well, look, you know, we're not sure if we've done something because we put content on there so much, we're developing all this stuff, you've given us all these briefs, we've done so many changes, and hold on, Toby was doing something last week, and I'm not quite sure what he was doing, but that might be the reason why the website's down. We're not quite sure. So what happens next? You go and speak to the marketing people. Have you put some content on there in the wrong place to trigger the wrong event? Is something going to happen that you guys have done? And these guys were in Starbucks brainstorming. They had no idea. So you get into this loop of kind of finger pointing. Who owns what? Where's the responsibility like? You know, is it me? Is it you? Is it someone else's fault? And the end result is that the business, in this particular instance, the dean of the university, and this happened, this was on admissions day, the website went down. And you have a very, very frustrated owner of a business who can't get his content out. So what's the alternative? The alternative is Acquia. And why the alternative is because we move that whole complicated diagram you had before into a very, very simple relationship, which is that we take care of all of those elements that otherwise cause confusion when it comes to ownership of issues. Because we understand Drupal intimately, we are literally as close to Drupal as you can get, we can identify whether these issues are code related very early on. And because we own the hosting environment that it's on, we can identify whether there is in the LAMP stack, whether it's to do with the configuration of your Memcache service, your Varnish, etc. The idea being that we provide, in essence, what is kind of almost a one throat to choke approach to providing support and hosting your Drupal environments.
Thank you, Chris. Dave Gully.
Thank you. So I wanted as much left for me to say.
With a very quick word about how our products and services look to make that vision possible, and hopefully 3 minutes on the end for me to talk just a little bit more about open source.
Yeah, so I think we made the connection. So Dries Buytaerts, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly there, is the founder of the Drupal project, but also the founder of Acquia. So there's clearly a very close link between the two. And Dries is, I think the putting the money to one side, Dries' intention with Acquia was always to build a vehicle to help accelerate the migration onto the Drupal platform, so that more individuals and organisations could benefit from the power and the innovation and the economics, the benefits of a lower cost CMS. So Acquia, I guess, building on that story, we exist to accelerate that journey onto the Drupal platform, to de-risk that migration and to simplify it. Just wanted to pick out, we've talked lots about some US case studies. In the UK work, or in Europe I should say first, there's the European Commission. They are standardising on Drupal for a particular project, and I think some quite exciting things coming out of there. BBC, the Good Food website, which clearly gets very large traffic peaks during Christmas and Easter, etc. That's running on the Acquia cloud. Saïd Business School of Oxford University, Brighton Hove City Council, King's College, Great Ormond Street. We've got a really strong list of case studies and reference customers that if anyone's interested in understanding what the engagement looks like, we can set up reference calls if need be. So on to the next slide, I think, Jan. So who are we? What do we do? So I think we've touched upon this today, but Acquia is a Drupal company, clearly, but that's all we do. We don't touch any other CMSs, any other technologies. The reason we clearly focus on this is that we believe that it's the most agile and the most modern platform for delivering an integrated experience whereby you have the content, commerce and community aspects all in a single platform. So you're moving away from the legacy model of having multiple technologies that become difficult and expensive to update in line with the business and your business's expectations. Just to say on the platform point of view, platform perspective, commercially we offer support packages. So Acquia is the largest global support entity for Drupal. So we can offer you a ticketed support solution akin to a proprietary type vendor. So at 3 AM, if your website fails, you can pick up the phone, put a call into Acquia, and most of our subscriptions include an hour's response time for critical tickets on a 24/7 basis. Then the cloud platform. So we build our cloud out on the Amazon stack. We're currently getting about 36 billion hits per month in terms of the amount of traffic that we're supporting. We have our own dedicated farm with Amazon, and I think it's in like 2% of the entire Amazon farms today. So it's a very big presence that we have with Amazon.
We are, without being too specific, we are among the top 10 Amazon customers in terms of usage and volume. So we have a great relationship with them as well.
And the real point here is this is a platform as a service. As Chris kind of alluded to before, we take care of the back end, the sysadmin of the application, the patching, the feeding, the watering. We provide your digital teams with the keys to the platform to go deliver the experiences, to worry about the content and building that experience in line with the customer's expectations. And then on top of that, we have clearly Drupal is an infinitely extensible platform, and you can add lots of different modules based on your requirements. But as Acquia, we've built some very specific digital marketing tools. So we have something called Acquia Lift, which is a personalization service which is integrated into our platform, so you can do the A/B variant testing, etc. We have Acquia Mollum, which is a content moderation tool if you're running any communities on Acquia or on Drupal. And then we have Acquia Search, which is essentially Solar as a service. So if anyone's heard of Solar Search, if you're on our platform, that's there as a free plugin. So I think one thing just we've kind of touched upon building web experiences, and if you're building truly compelling, engaging experiences, then you need the right content. It needs ideally to be personalised for the audience, and ideally you want to start predicting your visitors, your users' journey through your website. So not only have you got to try and deliver this great experience with the user predictive journey, you also want to try and tie it into community and into commerce if that's relevant. So all great websites today have a community element, be that voting on content, be that building organic groups. And at Acquia, we recognise that can be a challenge delivering this experience. And not only is it a challenge to deliver that experience today, but the nature of the web is that it's always evolving, always changing. The next social integration is just around the corner. So you need to approach this in an iterative fashion. And at Acquia, we refer to this as the digital lifecycle management. So through our years of experience of delivering Drupal projects and through our platform, we're able to deliver you an end-to-end process that ensures you get access to expert services when you're going through a architect plan design mode, so we can help you to fast track those decisions as to what your Drupal infrastructure should look like. And then we can host you on the most secure and the most available platform that's available in the market today. And we go through this process typically left to right, but you can dip back into this process at any time as the agile development models would dictate. I think that's it, isn't it? So just one thing to say, you can download and access the Acquia Cloud and the Drupal instance for free, as I think Jan mentioned before. So I think we'll put on the presentation that we'll send out, but by all means, please come to acquia.com, download the free version, and you'll also get access to the development tools and the workflow tools, etc. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So, by my count, I have 5 minutes. I would like to leave you with what we've talked about today. I hope that I was able to show you that Drupal, thanks to being open source at scale, is delivering aspects, empowering people to practice successful digital government today, on the front lines, in the trenches right now, and a little bit about how we as a professional organization with our partner network fit into that picture and how we might be able to help you with that. And obviously, we're all here for questions after. Love to talk with you. There's contact information here. Get our business cards afterwards. I went a little long on the content and a little short on the question time. I apologize, but we'll be around. Last point. There's a lot of people. There are some people out there who are telling you, hey, proprietary software, open source software, it doesn't matter. There's a guy who runs a commercial CMS who says it doesn't matter if a CMS is open source or proprietary. It's about features and service. I promise that my proprietary and license fee charging CMS will do what you need. Nobody cares about the rest. Okay? Now, I say that's not true, and I want to talk about, whoa, slow down. So, look, my father in America talks about the restaurant industry, and there's a saying in the restaurant industry, it says, you gotta own the bricks, okay? So, if you rent a space in the United States and you start a restaurant and you're a great cook and people come and you've got the perfect location and you build up a business and after a year or two you're making great money, your landlord sees that and your landlord's like, you're doing great. I'm really thrilled about that. By the way, starting next month, I'm doubling your rent. And what can you do about it? You can't move, you can't leave. Location is everything. You've built your existence based on infrastructure that you can't control. I'm doing the same when I let fill in the blank, some proprietary software company dictate to me what I can do with my own business. If I'm building my business, if you're building my citizen services on infrastructure that you don't own and that you're not in control of, it's not okay. They can be sunsetted, they can be shut down, you can be told you're allowed to use the next version. By the way, the next version costs 30% more and doesn't have that feature that you always use. You can make it the tool you need and you can stay in control of it and you can use it forever and nobody can take it away from you. Okay? So I ask you, please consider building your citizen services on infrastructure that you own and control, and so that you can make it exactly what you need and exactly what they need. So, open source, you got to own the bricks. Open source gives you those bricks. Thank you so much for coming to listen to us today. We have a couple of minutes, I think, for questions. Any questions that you want to share with the audience?
Can I just ask one, sort of touching on what you were saying there at the very end? If you had your website on Drupal 7, I believe Drupal 8 is coming at some stage with the not too distant future.
Ask it, do it, ask it.
Okay, so I'm on Drupal 7, I'm not, but if I was, do I have to pay to go across to Drupal 8?
So there is a multifaceted answer.
Yeah.
No IT project is for free, no upgrade is for free, it will cost money. There is still a Drupal 3 website online. There's no reason, the person whose site it is, it does everything he needs. It's not a problem. Drupal 7 is great software, and it will be fully supported and fully secure at a minimum through the entire Drupal 8 release cycle. So, given that Drupal 8 is probably coming out next spring, either in beta or release candidate or 1.0, and given the length of Drupal release cycles and the security model that we've been using so far, that means that you should have no concerns about having a Drupal 7 website for the next 5 years. And 5 years is certainly enough time and a common enough amount of time for most organizations to be planning on changes and upgrades in any case. If you want to wait for Drupal 8 to come out, if you really believe it, you're really excited about it, and you can wait, fine. But there's no reason not to work with Drupal 7 at this point, if there's not a compelling case for one of the new features from Drupal 8 that you really need for your application.
But if we needed it, for example, and again it's hypothetical.
Yeah.
If you were our Drupal agency, we just work with you to, to transition or optimize our site.
Yes, and there's some great news in the package. There's an automated content migration tool built into Drupal 8 that not only migrates content from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, but also from Drupal 6 to Drupal 8 without passing through Drupal 7, and imports content from other platforms. WordPress to Drupal 8, Joomla to Drupal 8, Typo3 to Drupal 8. Very, very interesting. Any other questions? We killed them. Job done. Okay, guys. Well, if you want to pop up and come and grab us any time, I think we will have business cards on us, so happy to explain. And stickers. And stickers. Yeah, plenty of stickers.
Upstairs to the